Void Mage Gamer is now partnered with Flipside Gaming, so you can use the promo code on their website, all caps Void Mage, to get 10% off all orders $10 or more. It's a great way that you can support both Flipside Gaming and Void Mage Gamer's channel. Hello guys, welcome back to another top 10 Commander video. This time we're going to continue the 3-color Commander cards, going over Jund this time. You're going to see almost entirely Commander options with the exception of like one card, which if there's ever anything that we actually need, I would like to see non-Commander option 3-color cards, just to mix it up a bit. From a design perspective, I can understand why that may not seem practical, but when it comes to something like Jund, it would make things like a top 10 list more interesting. But we're going to start it off here with the honorable mentions. There's one card here, Gyrus, Waker of Corpses. Not too many to choose from. Honestly, just a ton of potential here, but I just don't really see it there yet. Might be because of his own limitations, exiling that creature. In a graveyard deck, it kind of limits what you're able to do long term. And having a Jund graveyard themed deck is so cool in theory. It's just because we don't have that many viable options. You could most certainly make a Jund graveyard deck, but we don't really have a powerful engine yet. But yeah, I mean, right as he came out, I feel like a lot of people felt the same way. Could be really cool, but in a graveyard deck, you want to be able to have some sort of recursion that lasts longer than just a combat, and you don't want to have to give up those creatures to exile. Let's start off the top 10 with number 10, Wasi Tora, Nekoru Queen. Not the biggest fan of this dragon, but she does at least have a pretty cool damage trigger. That player has to sacrifice a creature. If they can't, you get a 3/3 black, red, and green cat dragon creature token with flying. So more likely going to see play in a 5-color dragon deck, or some sort of dragon deck. Very unusual creature type here in a cat dragon, but a pretty cool engine here if you want to get some more creature tokens, get more dragon creature tokens. She's a way to do that. Otherwise, she's kind of just another Thraxamundar, which for 5 mana in Jund is pretty good. Number 9 is Thantis the War Weaver. I love this strategy. Very unique in Jund. Pillow Fort is kind of the opposite of what you would expect. It doesn't have to be Pillow Fort, of course, but that's kind of what you're going to set yourself up for. If everybody has to attack with their creatures, you don't want them to attack you. You could set up a huge trap if your opponents decide to attack you, and Thantis is going to get bigger if they do that anyway. Only reason why it's not higher is because while it is a very unique strategy in these colors, it's not always the most entertaining playstyle. Number 8, we have Violent Ultimatum. Now, Cruel Ultimatum is probably the best ultimatum, but I think a lot of people are going to forget about this card. 7 mana, incredibly specific colors, but you get to destroy 3 permanents. So just permanent removal, but being able to target 3 things is pretty good if you have one opponent who's trying to go all out. It's not like Windgrace's Judgment where you have to have one for each opponent. I love removal, I love practical cards. This is a pretty practical card that doesn't see that much play, but I think if you're talking about a card in Jund colors, it wouldn't hurt to know about this card. Number 7 is Krosh the Blood Braided. I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not the biggest fan of Krosh, and it's kind of the big reason why I'm not a big fan of a lot of other cards in Commander, usually the ones that get bigger without having any other keywords. Where Krosh does get a pass is that he's a Commander option, a legendary creature, so you can build a deck around giving him keywords, giving him protection, so over time, creatures are just going to be dying, he's going to be getting massive. You can make him unblockable, deal Commander damage pretty easily. From a design perspective, he is pretty boring to me, but I understand why so many people choose to go with him for Voltron, because getting to that 21 Commander damage is pretty easy. Number 6 is Karthus, Tyrant of Jund. One of the better Dragon Commander options if you want to go with a Dragon Tribe. Major downside though is going up against any sort of deck with clones. You are immediately screwed. But other than that though, he's a pretty good option for just about any dragon deck if you want to throw him in as one of the 99. He's pretty good in an Dragon strategy. Massive dragons with awesome keywords, being able to steal your opponent's dragons if they have any, which pretty common creature type. Chances are in a multiplayer game you're going to come across an opponent with 1 or 2. A lot of potential for a commander, but also a lot of risk. Number 5 is Sekuar Death Keeper. I love Aristocrats, and Jund Aristocrats is a pretty cool deck to make. Make a deck focused entirely around your creatures dying. You get value off of Sekuar, get a 3/1 black and red Graveborn creature token with haste into play. And there are a lot of combos that you can do. Having those creatures with haste pretty much means that if you have any way to get infinite death triggers, you're probably going to win the game. Doesn't have to be combo oriented, but that does seem like the most successful way to build a deck. Being able to set yourself up every turn being able to attack with a bunch of hasty tokens, not necessarily caring about if they die or not. Just 3 power creatures being able to swing consistently is very underrated, and keeping pressure on certain opponents is also pretty good. Now, probably when it comes to design, number 4, Shadowgang Brothers, is probably the most creative designed Jund commander option. Artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. What you kind of have here is the Fleshbag Marauder equivalent for those other types. If you pay the 3 mana and you sacrifice an artifact, each opponent has to sacrifice one. Same thing for the creatures and the enchantments. Kind of brings a control aspect to Jund. Again, whenever you have a commander that can sort of be a change of pace, people are more likely to want to experiment with them. It's just more interesting. And there are a lot of cool things that you could do. You have enchantment creatures, you have artifact enchantments, you have artifact creatures, so there's a lot of flexibility in what you're able to force your opponents to sacrifice if you need it. And of course, you want to focus on good death triggers or leave play triggers. Getting value is necessary in a deck like this. Number 3, we have Victus Asmati the Dyer. One of the things that is the most interesting for me in Commander is not always knowing what's going to happen or how a certain situation is going to play out, and Victus is kind of like that. You do have removal, but it's important to remember that it's not guaranteed to solve whatever problem. You may end up creating a much bigger problem, giving your opponent something else from their deck. But seeing as cards like Chaos Warp are already pretty popular in the format, removal like this really wasn't as doomed as you might think. It's actually quite good if you get rid of what is considered to be the best permanent on someone's board. Even if you give them back something pretty good, at least it's not what you were originally afraid of. And there are certain ways that you can manipulate your own deck because you are able to target something of yours, making something like a Vampiric Tutor even more powerful. I just like the versatility, the ability to get something from your deck that's really powerful, and being able to simultaneously dismantle your opponent's boards. Number 2, we have Lord Windgrace. Pretty quickly became one of the most popular commander options in Jund colors. Behind number 1, of course, but we're going to get to him in a minute. The land strategies are just numerous. You see Landfall, you see the Gitrog monster, Tatiova. It's incredibly popular because it's incredibly powerful. Being able to ramp up way ahead of your opponents allows you to do crazy X-costed spells, play massive creatures. When you also have an engine that can draw you more cards, it gets really ridiculous. And combine it with an alt that is just insane removal, you have a pretty solid engine here. Most people lean towards the powerful engines on their creatures when they go for commander decks. Lord Windgrace is pretty damn good. And then we have number 1, of course, if you couldn't guess it, Krosh Skyraider of Care. As far as engines on a commander goes, Krosh has been a pretty good one for a while. The best sack outlets in the format are the ones that can give you the most advantage, like Ashnod's Altar, but the best thing about them is that you don't have to actually pay mana to sacrifice creatures, making Krosh better than something like Gaveguru of Spores. If you have to pay mana to sacrifice a creature, it just takes up more of your mana in that turn. You're not able to cast your other spells, you're not able to take advantage of the sack outlet to begin with. Krosh is good because he's from Commander 2013, where casting your commander multiple times yielded different rewards. In this case, the more mana that you spent to cast him meant the more Cobalt tokens that you got, and people noticed right off the bat that he could combo with a card called Food Chain. So combine it with pretty much anything that triggers when creatures die. You could accumulate a ton of those Cobalt tokens and then sack them all to Krosh, so your Blood Artist is incredibly valuable. Or if you had something that is good on ETB, like a Warstorm Surge, that's a win con. Perforos is a win con. Goblin Bombardment is a win con. There's just a ton of cool things, ton of ways to win with Krosh, even if you don't go for the insane combos. Getting a ton of token fodder off of casting your commander is ridiculous. You could make a Voltron deck around him. You could make a token deck because of that. An incredibly simple commander, but he just accomplishes so much of what you want him to do in Jund. Just a brilliant commander, and has been one of my favorite for a while. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this top 10 video. Let me know what you think about Jund. You guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.